Help wanted signs posted on the door.
We are looking for all positions and we're willing to train from the bottom.
No one around to help you out when you need it.
To gain employees, we haven't quite been able to.
So where are the workers? It's an issue impacting more than retail stores.
So it has been a challenge, definitely, to find good work with the skill level that we do require.
From government services to the state's top economic driver, how the labor shortage is having a ripple effect across the islands, and what needs to change to address the problem. This live broadcast and live stream of KΑKOU, Hawaii's Town Hall, starts now.
Aloha and welcome to KAKOU, Hawaii's Town Hall, live from the Harry and Jeanette Weinberg Multimedia Studio. I'm Yanji Denise. The pandemic has brought many changes to the way we live and the way we work. According to the University of Hawaii Economic Research Organization, or UHERO, Hawaii has roughly 39,000 fewer jobs filled than before the pandemic began. Now, whether it's a table at your favorite restaurant or trying to get a spot for your child at summer fun, or making sure you're able to see a healthcare provider when you need to, there are fewer people filling these jobs, and that can have a profound impact on how we live. We all know the cost of living here in Hawaii is high. Most of us need to work at least one job, so the question is, where are the workers? And if this tighter labor market is here to stay, how do we all adapt? KAKOU means all of us, as in we are all in this together. So we want to hear from you in our discussion tonight. You can email or call in your questions. We're also streaming live at pbshawaii.org and on the PBS Hawaii Facebook page. In our town hall tonight, we have local business owners, leaders in labor and workforce development, economic experts, and the people we need more of, the workers themselves. So let's dive right into the discussion to talk about these hiring challenges. Thank you all for being here tonight. It's wonderful to see all of you in studio with us. Ryan, I want to start with you. You not only operate a restaurant here in town, you also are the head of the Hawaii Restaurant Association. Tell us what it's been like to hire in your industry over the last few months.
Well, you know, the restaurant industry, it's ever evolving. So I can start by just commending all the restaurant owners who made it this far and survived during the pandemic. Many did not survive. And those who did survive, they're still struggling. Some of them are on their last leg and still hoping to tread above water. So it's very real, and it's good that the public hears that and knows that so that they can go out and support all of our restaurants.
Yeah, and in terms of hiring, has it been difficult to actually find the people that you need?
So the two greatest challenges, the first is actually our food costs, and the second would be staffing. So managing our food costs, you know, with the CPI being where it is, and just we're always innovating, trying to find ways to control food costs and also enhance our pricing. But for staffing, that is our absolute top priority in terms of creating a culture where they want to stay and also recruit others. So it's becoming creative in how you incentivize them, creating new bonus structures, creative benefits, and being more supportive if they call in sick, and also trying to increase the engagement. So creating a culture where not only they want to be inspired to do better, but also call their friends and, you know, be a part of that same company.
Yeah, Roseanne, I want to go to you. We know that retail suffers a lot of the same struggles that the restaurant industry has had when it comes to staffing. You operate a TNC surf shop at Pearlridge. Tell us a little bit about what it's been like to hire in retail.
Well, for us at the Pearlridge Center, I'm very lucky to have a wide range of demographics that I hire for. So it is a little bit easier to pick and choose, you know, who would work well in retail and at our store. And it's a fun business, you know, and we sell fun products. So the kids always engage and learn from there as well. It's a great first job.
Carl, I want to go to you. Carl Hinson here from Hawaii Pacific Health. We know the healthcare industry has gone through so much over the last few years, and when we look at the numbers, I want to bring up a graphic here that really tells this story. A recent report from the Healthcare Association of Hawaii found there are close to 4,000 non-physician positions open. That's up from 2,200 in 2019. Overall, 17% of total positions are unfilled. So where did everyone go, and where are you finding new workers?
Thank you. Yeah, we had a number of people that retired. Obviously, I think it's been well documented that a lot of people left the workforce across the country. That certainly hit us as well. But what we saw was more of an impact of burnout on the part of our staff. And because of the high cost of living, they couldn't afford to stay here if they left their organizations. And so we saw a large number of people actually leave the state to pursue employment on the mainland, also to be closer to family. you think about Hawaii, about 30 to 40% of our workforce comes from the mainland. And so we get them to come to Hawaii, but because of the pandemic, they had so many family members that got sick or needed their assistance, it became easier for them to move, relocate back to the mainland. And so that really impacted the number of job openings we have. But it also brought to light that we don't have enough of the training programs here locally for us to be able to just grow our own workforce. And so that's part of why at the Healthcare Association of Hawaii and many throughout the industry have been looking at ways of getting more training programs into the high schools. Let's get that entry-level workforce skilled up while they're still in high school, and then help them progress their careers after they graduate. So a lot of work, a lot of effort, more to come.
Yeah, and we're going to talk to some great workforce development folks here tonight. But first, I want to go to NOLA here from the City and County of Honolulu. City and County of Honolulu Mayor Rick Blangiardi has said that it is one of his priorities to try to fill the more than 3,000 vacancies that the city has. We went to a job fair just yesterday. The city and county alone, they didn't have one table. They had over a dozen from different agencies that are looking to hire. You think about, we mentioned summer fun at the beginning. That's something that, is critical to a lot of families. And then, of course, we're looking at over 300 police officers that are still needed. So what is the city doing to speed up the hiring process, and what are the challenges when you're trying to hire?
Well, thank you, Yunji. The city and county has, as you know, many openings, and we're also operating within a fairly structured environment with civil service rules and our merit principle. But what we have done is we've realized that about 15% of our current workforce is retirement eligible. So between the retirements and separations and the hiring, what we want to do is change the trajectory that we've had. We've lost jobs over the last 5 years, about 200 or a couple hundred a year for the last 5 years. And that's why we just need to, change the trajectory. We are able by law to offer, incentive recruitment incentives. So we're looking at everything. We're changing the way we hire people, the way we reach out. We're doing aggressive hiring and recruiting and changing our brand image, doing a lot more outreach and social media to reach different kinds of demographics across the state. We're also using tools that may appeal to people that may come back from the mainland and want to come back to Hawaii. So we're looking at all kinds of options that help get the word out about our vacancies and the fact that, the city is really a great place to work. We are competing with a lot of employers for a lot of similar jobs, not just the state and other counties, but with the private sector. So we realize that, and so we just have to be more competitive.
Mm-hmm. Carl Bonham, I want you to sort of widen this out for us and give us some perspective. When we looked at the numbers in 2019, Hawaii had 1.9% unemployment. Today, as for the December numbers, we had 3.2%. So you would think that given that unemployment disparity, that we had a tighter labor market pre-pandemic. Why does it feel so different now?
So think about when you're on the freeway and there's a wreck, right? And when that accident happens, it can take all day long for the traffic to get unjammed, right? And that's largely what we're dealing with. We had a wreck, and I mean the pandemic accelerated all kinds of transitions, all kinds of trends, whether it's Zooming, right, remote work, shopping online. It also accelerated retirements. It accelerated people leaving the state, right? So we've seen about a 25,000 person decline in our population since before the pandemic. We've seen an increase in retirement age workers, a pretty dramatic increase in the number of people in their 70s, almost 10 to 15,000 people aged into a group that is almost certainly retired. We saw an acceleration in early retirements, and then we suddenly opened back up for business, right? And all of a sudden, everybody needed those workers back. And we're still working through that, right? And so some of the people who left we saw about a 25,000 person drop in Gen Z population between 2019 and 2011, which is pretty shocking. And my guess is that many of those were people working in the service industry in the state who went back to family on the mainland during the pandemic. And unfortunately, this issue with an aging population is not going away. There's around 15%. We were talking about what the city was talking about, how many of their workers are sort of eligible for retirement. That's true in the overall population. It's about 15% of the population is 60 to 69. So 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we're going to be dealing with the same thing, which speaks to some of the things that Ryan was talking about, others talking about how we address this, how we deal with it.
Well, one person who didn't leave is Celine. You're a young worker who's actually seeking employment. You've heard from, we have restaurants, retail, the city, healthcare. You really have your pick. The world is your oyster if you're looking for a job right now. Do you feel like that changes your decision making and how you look for a job right now, knowing that there is so much availability?
Definitely. From my experience while I'm actively looking and applying for employment, a lot of the, I guess, descriptions for the job, like some of them is like, oh yeah, I can do it, but then some of the requirements are like, oh, you want me to be flexible for you. You want like, I would say that my generation or people like me are looking for employment that will allow us to be flexible rather than having to be, the other way around. Yeah.
Well, and that's really interesting, and I want you to weigh in on that, Keisha, because you actively work with young people. You're a little bit farther along your employment journey, if you will, but do you feel like the expectations on the employee side has changed from what you're seeing with the people that you work with?
Sorry, I'm just trying to take in that question a little bit. Yeah. Actually, I do want to defer to Kavika just because I'm kind of new in this role and kind of really finding my place in like a career field too. So I feel like I have a very unique experience, which we'll probably go into a little bit more. But I think Kavika might be able to speak a little bit more on seeing like the young people and the programming that we do and like how we recruit them, how we retain them. How they retained me, I guess, in a sense, too. From being unemployed, I was one of those COVID people totally out of the job. Used to work in restaurant and my whole career change I was upheaved and I ended up staying in conservation. So I think Kavika can talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, and Kavika's here from KUPU. Tell us a little bit about what KUPU does and sort of if you think that, given how long you've worked with young people, if the expectations of the employees has changed.
Yeah, well, first I think I'd like to address sort of the broader question of what's happening in the labor market. In some ways, of course, we feel that we're a part of it. In addition to providing hundreds of jobs and internships for youth and young adults, we're a growing employer ourselves. But one of the things that's been really exciting, and Keisha is an example of that, is that there's been tremendous interest that doesn't seem to be going anywhere among the young population to get into conservation, to find a job that's responding to the climate changes that we're already starting to see. So I think that larger desire for meaning, for connection, that's something that we seek to provide in our programming, and it seems to have a strong appeal for the population that we focus on. I think it's why our organization has doubled in size since where we were at the beginning of the pandemic. So, it's not something that we can really take credit for. We're fortunate to get to respond to the passion of young adults here in Hawaii.
Interesting. Eric, I want to go to you because you represent Local 5 and many people who obviously are working. Businesses have had to adapt, and the tourism industry certainly has. They are doing more with less. What does that mean for the people who are still working? What is the experience of workers in this environment?
Yeah, I think we should, first of all, I'm not disagreeing with anything that's been said, but there is a counterpoint here. During the pandemic, people learned something about their jobs. And the truth is, my members were laid off, and none of the hotels did anything for them. So people were put on their own devices. And what they had to do then was seek other employment and find other ways to do it. If you look at it, people do have to work multiple jobs here. They always have. It has not gotten any better despite our best efforts. So what that means is husband and wife have to have this whole choreographed dance. You got to pick up, drop off. You got to have somebody there for the kids. And that all got busted up one time. And so people had to go and find other ways to make a living. And it broke the pattern. And that pattern hasn't reformed. what everybody is now is have multiple small jobs. And when the hotels call them back, they say, well, come back and we'll offer you on-call work. So, you know, there's a pattern here that should be addressed. It's not young people's fault necessarily that the jobs aren't acceptable to them. When we've done the research, we saw through the pandemic, for example, that the hotel corporations, the owners specifically went to their investors and said, we're going to cut staff. We're going to reduce the labor force to increase the profits for the investors. They did it. It was in Wall Street Journal, it was everywhere else, and that has played itself out. The hotels we're still at, despite our best efforts, restoring daily housekeeping in hotels, we're still at about only 90% of 2019 employment levels. So there's work there that they're not offering because the corporations have decided to make more money instead of offer more jobs. We're also dealing with tech issues. You know, nowadays you check in on your phone. It's your room key. That's where that's going. This is going to continue to cut into the jobs that are actually attractive. And I think there is a change that, you know, there's a, you know, when I was a young person, I once was, you know, you'd try to pick a company that you'd stick with and you could move up with. And the companies didn't stick with us. And I think it's really interesting to note that, especially for working women, the situation has made their finances far more critical. For example, you know, my daughter has to work on the graveyard shift. She's got 2 young kids. You know, the school sends them home if somebody tests positive. During the pandemic, you had to be there for your kids. There's no daycare. Nobody set up more daycare options for parents who have to work. And so they're basically stuck in this terrible situation. I can go to work and make 20 bucks an hour and I got to take 15 bucks of that and give it to my daycare. And so people are faced with a real economic bind. There's not enough support for working people, and there's not enough support for the training as well. We run a training program. We graduate people who are qualified, or, you know, we give them a certificate, and the hotel says, you need 2 years of experience. Well, where are you going to get that? So we're trying to figure that out. How do you actually get people hired? You know, and I'm not clear. You know, we did a job fair last year, and you know, hotels were there. Kaiser was there. We represent Kaiser workers, so healthcare workers during the pandemic definitely felt abandoned by everybody.
Jared,
so we have this thing we have to get past. Workers have to trust their employer, and I think that's a real problem right now.
Jared, let's hear from you. You work in the hotel industry yourself. How has it been for you? Do you feel like you have to do more with less?
So my personal experience, not to take away anything from what Eric has just said, but I currently work for Hotel in Waikiki, and we're non-unionized. And I have a lot of really kind of benefits to say about just how my experience, like throughout the whole pandemic, was. So I was very fortunate enough that the hotel that I was with did not lay off any of our employees. They maintained our medical for 2 years going into the pandemic. And right now we're actively hiring like regular staffing just to kind of keep us going. We're actually one of the few hotels that I'm very proud to say still has daily housekeeping. So all those points, I'm not sure for those like larger corporations, but at least for my experience, I'm very happy to say that that's been my experience with the whole, during the pandemic, I've seen a lot of growth opportunities for myself being in the industry and also just being local. I've seen a lot of, like I graduated from UH, I went to Roosevelt. You know, I've seen a lot of really positive opportunities come my way. And honestly speaking, I would love to see a lot of students and a lot of local kids in the industry, or like just in general going to college, not sure what their paths are, just to experience the benefits of working in tourism and hospitality. Just that's kind of been my whole not to discredit anything Eric said, because obviously
well, and
he has
we all
all
have
the
different
data, right?
experiences. And actually, on that same point, Danene, you operate a small business, a local business that many of us, of course, are familiar with, Manuhealiʻi, a wonderful clothing brand here in the islands. And your experience through all of this, when we were talking earlier, you've been able to retain your employees. Your story is very different. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so our small business, thanks by the way, our small business is family run, and our employees become like family. So for us to have the same 18 people that we had in the beginning of the pandemic, and we too kept covering everybody's medical and retained all their employment, but it's working side by side with the same person every day, and that's how we have been able to all work through the pandemic together. And in addition to that, everybody who worked, I mean, we couldn't all do retail, so everybody learned a new skill. You know, everybody learned how to cut, or everybody learned how to manufacture something. And then, you know, it was kind of cool that we all got together and we could talk story about, what do you want to make? What do you think we should make? You know, and it was just good to have that kind of interaction with the employees that do become our family.
And that is the benefit of working in such a small environment.
Yes.
Yeah. Keala Peters, I want to bring you in on this. Recently, a member of our PBS staff went to Foodland and looked at the bottom of the receipt, and it said, we actually have a copy of this receipt because we have to see it to believe it, that the store was offering up to a $3,000 hiring bonus. Now, this is in December. We don't know if this is still available, so don't rush out to Foodland and ask for this. But, you know, that said, businesses are having to do a lot of things to try to attract workers. So how are you advising your members to stay competitive right now?
So employers are realizing that they have to be innovative, much like we've heard tonight. They're also realizing that they can't just sit and be consumers of talent. They have to actually be co-creators of talent. And so we're seeing businesses get involved and take action to make sure that their talent pipeline is filled with skilled local workers. So we see a lot of employers getting involved in our schools, which is vitally important. Because this work-based learning that our employers do in schools makes sure that our young people are prepared for career success. We see them getting involved in training. And so these are things that are not going to necessarily pay off tomorrow. The ROI may be a little longer, but if they have the foresight to be able to act in that way, and in fact, just among this stage here, we have a number of examples of employers that are investing their resources in working with our young people. We have Hawaii Pacific Health and Hawaiian Airlines and KūPU. And so this is a time where employers are having to innovate, they're having to invest in training, they're having to invest in going out into the schools. We're looking at different employment methods. So it's not just traditional career fairs, for instance, or sitting and waiting for applicants. We're facilitating meet and greets with employers and bringing a handful of employers to meet with students, even in the classroom at the University of Hawaii. So we're going to be doing that in in-demand industries because we know that these are where the good jobs are. So we want to make sure that our young people can get, first of all, the skills training for these good jobs, as well as paid internships and training, and then eventually job placement support. And so there's a very exciting initiative that actually will be launched on Monday called Good Jobs Hawaii. And this is really a once-in-a-generation workforce development investment for Hawaii that we should all be very excited about. These are federal dollars that Hawaii has been awarded to put 3,000 kama'aina on a career pathway from skilled training at UH community colleges, fully subsidized, into paid internships, and into job placement with the wraparound support that they need so that they can persist in their journey of gaining these new skills. So you'll hear it announced on Monday. It's a coalition between employers statewide, the University of Hawaii, community members like the Chamber, and this is just one example of what our state needs to do more of to make sure that our young people can stay in Hawaii and thrive in good jobs, and employers can find the local talent that they need. Yeah. So more on Monday.
I'm looking forward to that. And Greg, I want to bring you in here because you represent the Polynesian Cultural Center tonight. You head up food and beverage there. We know you feed thousands of people every day, but through the pandemic, you made some really significant adaptations, and actually it's paid off for workers and for the company.
Yeah, so we were closed for 11 and a half months during the pandemic, so we had some time on our hands. And we went through all that everybody has talked about during the pandemic. You know, we laid off, we retired people, we furloughed people. We really tried our best to take as best care as we could, but with the pandemic being who we are, we had to close. But during that time, we decided to look at our model. What was the model that we needed? Under the direction of Alfred Grace, who's our CEO, we were able to come up with a model that really worked best. And that is, we're about 40% less visitors a year, and we cap. So before we used to have 1,500 people in our luau's, now we have 500. We used to have 1,600 in our Gateway Buffet, now we have 740. So we cap our attendance, which I think helps speak to the whole, how much tourism is enough tourism. We've already gotten to that point. And we just finished 2022, which was our best year on record since 1963. Yeah. So we found a model that works for us. And what we've done is we've closed on Wednesdays and Sundays. And so that allows us to have one shift of employees versus, we've always been closed on Sunday. But when you have a 6th day, that allows, I mean, you've got to have some extra employees in there, and it becomes a much different model. By closing 2 days a week, we now have people get 2 days off a week. You know, that really improves their quality of life. You know, in the hospitality world, to have 2 full days off is almost unheard of. We're able to offer that to our employees. And so we've been able to attract it. Now, we're very blessed in that we have BYU Hawaii, where we get a lot of our entry-level employees. We're back up to pre-pandemic numbers when it comes to students that we hired. Before we had 800 in 2019, we're back to 800. Where we are, like everybody else, is we're lacking in the skilled employees. We're trying to find ways. And when we have time, I would love to talk about, come back, and I don't want to take too much time. But we've had to do some developing of some certificate programs and worked with BYU Hawaii and to be able to address that.
Well, and on that very point, I think, Robin, you're the perfect segue. That's a perfect segue to you. You're here tonight on behalf of Hawaiian Airlines. Hawaiian Airlines recently announced a pretty major partnership with Honolulu Community College. You know, when you think about some of the businesses that are represented tonight, they can staff up and staff down, but you can't really have not enough airline mechanics, right? So tell us about that partnership and what you're hoping to do with that.
Yeah, so as you may know, and many of us, I think, are experiencing this, having skilled workers is really challenging I mean, it was certainly the case pre-pandemic, but it was exacerbated post-pandemic. So we partnered with the university, who has just been a fabulous partner of ours, to really determine how we can best support that pipeline of talent starting from HCC. So we partnered with them on getting instructors, on modifying the curriculum, on having tools for students who couldn't afford them. We've been partnering with our union to also provide additional supports so that we can widen that pipeline of mechanics who are graduating from HCC. We also have an internship program that can ensure that whichever graduates come out of the community college are prepared and successful in the workforce. But I think most importantly, and we're expanding this now to the high schools, and eventually our plan is to expand this to the middle schools.
Middle schools?
Yeah, so that we can get kids to, when we talk about STEM, I don't think they think aircraft mechanic. They think, oh, I need to become an engineer, or I need to become, you know, an MIT graduate. And what they don't realize is they're really great jobs that they can have as a career here in Hawaii. And so that's we started a internal program called the Alumni Ambassadors, where we asked everyone what school you grad, so that we can have them go into their schools that they graduated from and advocate for all the types of jobs that we provide, whether that be in IT, pilots, mechanics, finance, marketing, just to make our keiki aware of all of the different career opportunities that are available to them. And being an aircraft mechanic is an extremely lucrative job. It's a shift job, so that you can have the type of lifestyle that you want, whether that be working during the day or the night. It provides fabulous benefits, and many, many, many of our employees have created a career out of it. So it's something that, this is the start of other similar programs that we hope to have for other types of jobs at Hawaiian Airlines.
It's interesting that I saw everybody's reaction when Robin said middle schools, and she's right. We do it in healthcare as well, and we've been doing it for a few years. It's amazing to see the reaction of the middle school students and the elementary school students, and they get their parents engaged and involved, and that's a great way for us to be able to share what the opportunities are in healthcare and in the airline industry and in many of our industries. Get them younger so they know what's available and what the things they can do in school to actually get there.
Well, and they know they don't have a 4-year degree. They don't have to work towards a four-year degree.
And that's why I want to go to Julie now with Climb High, because you work with plenty of young people. Tell us a little bit about your organization and how you are preparing them as they enter the workforce.
Yeah, absolutely. So we strive to inspire our keiki to finish high school and to proceed to post-secondary education or on to employment. And by exposing them to future career paths and the steps to achieve those goals. And exactly this, we cover kindergarten through post-secondary because it's important to start all the way from kindergarten, because in our elementary schools, what do all the students say, right? They want to be a firefighter or a police officer, and God bless those professions because they're so good at getting into every single school. And so when I'm meeting with all of our businesses, it's exactly that. We need to be as good as they are because our keiki all come home saying that. But it's what we expose our youth to that they want to aspire to. So if we're not showing them things, then they won't have things to aspire to, hence why they're leaving, hence why they're going. And we have so much to offer here that we just need to get it out there, and that's why we're around, to be able to expose them to everything possible.
Right, and we talked a lot about growing workers, but I want to bring in Melly James now, because what you do is grow entrepreneurs, and we need a lot of those too. She's here from co-founder of Mana Up. Tell us a little bit about Mana Up and what advice you're giving to entrepreneurs in Hawaii who are trying to grow their business, given all the challenges we've heard about tonight.
Yeah, so Mana Up, we're an economic development initiative to help grow local product companies here in the islands looking to scale to global markets. So we run a 6-month accelerator program where we help them solve their business challenges and help grow them so that they can create more jobs, opportunity in the islands. So we actually, interestingly, we do a call for applications every January through March, and every year it grows. Interestingly, during the pandemic, we had over 20% of our applicants had started their businesses in under 18 months. So what that meant to me was people are kind of shifting. Everything's shifting for them. I think a couple other guests here tonight said the mold broke. And so it was either I lost my job or life can lead different pathways. So what am I going to do differently? And so we're seeing a lot more interest in entrepreneurship, starting that first company. And so that's been really exciting to see that. For what we're talking to the entrepreneurs about and the founders, interestingly, from a trend standpoint, we're seeing a lot of that authenticity, transparency, connection to culture. Micro brands are thriving, and a lot of young people are looking at values-based organizations where they can create impact in the islands. And so they're not looking for more of those traditional jobs. They're actually looking at who the founder is, what do they stand for, what is this, how is this helping Hawaii? And so we're finding that a lot of our entrepreneurs are still sometimes having a hard time finding employees, but they're also finding a lot more that are really interested in supporting their organization. But I'd say from a cost standpoint, we're always having challenges with cost of goods, but we're seeing a lot of the companies thriving. Our companies, the 74 that have come through Mana Up, have a 33% growth rate.
Wow.
And a lot of that was obviously due to e-commerce and that shifting gears with technology, people being a lot more adopting to buying online and being able to bring Hawaii to the world.
But it's also what you were talking about with that connection to culture, with that narrative. And Keisha, that really speaks to your career choices as well. I want to bring you back into the discussion. It's not necessarily the highest salary that is attracting, I mean, I hate to say this, but your generation, if you will. But it is that intangible of the connection. Talk about that.
Yeah, for sure. So actually, just to give some people some context and some background, I was originally working in musical theater in New York City, and I was working 3 jobs, because similar to Hawaii, you kind of have to work 3 jobs to live in New York. But I was working in merchandising, and I was working for executive producer, who to me was my dream job. When I was a little kid, I always wanted to do musical theater, and I wanted to do that, and then did it, went to New York, it was lovely, it was beautiful, and I saw a play that was written by a Kama'aina playwright, and it was very small theater, downtown Brooklyn, and I saw that we could be telling Hawaii stories, and I didn't need to be in New York to be telling those stories. And I kind of made that decision, moved here, and then the pandemic hit. Theater was not operating at that time, and neither was restaurant. I kind of went back into restaurant industry in Waikiki just you know, I still needed an income at some point. So, but yeah, then the pandemic hit, and then KUPU offered this KUPU Aina Core program. It was a 2-month program. It was federally funded, and they gave a bunch of it was like, please hire tons of people, and that's what they did. And I think especially for culturally, Aina is just tied so much with our mo'olelo, with our culture, with everything. Aina is a part of it. It's Aloha Aina. It is tied so much with our culture. And growing up Kanaka too, I didn't feel like I was exposed to that. Like Julie said, like just exposing the kids and to the different options that they have. Aina wasn't really an option for me, or wasn't presented as an option for me. And I discovered that I love it, and it tied so much with theater, telling stories, everything tied back into that. And yeah, I found that meaning. I found giving back to my lahui, my community, to the Aina. And then also getting to, a lot of people try to talk about bringing up middle schoolers and exposing them. Like my host site had posted a lot of community programs and middle schooler programs, and we introduced them to like, Aina, like this is a possibility for you. And I watched kids going from so scared to get in mud, so scared to even just get their t-shirt dirty. They came in with the nicest Nikes I've ever seen in my life, to them after the program, their parents coming to me saying like, they started the garden. They asked me, they wanted to plant food. They wanted to start this garden. They wanted to do that. And so I definitely, as a young person who shifted career paths, I very much we want to feel like we're doing something, I think, and yeah.
And I want to bring in sort of the panel, sorry, not the panel, the viewers are responding tonight, and please do keep your questions coming. I've got a bunch here. Carl, I want to bring this to you, and also some others on the panel. Mildred and Manoa says 16 of our seniors applied repeatedly but were not hired due to age discrimination. We seniors are the answer. Employers should have hired us before the pandemic. This other caller says, what about training those people who aren't fresh out of school? They have some experience to share and look for growth and change. You talk about people retiring out, specifically in healthcare, but also in other industries. How many of those people do you think will get back?
So what we're seeing nationally, unfortunately we don't have, it's pretty standard that you don't have the really detailed data down at the state and the county levels. But nationally what we're seeing is that people are not coming back from retirement. So we saw a lot of earlier retirement than would have been expected because of the pandemic. And unlike past recessions and recoveries, we aren't seeing those people coming back into the labor force like they have in the past. And partly that's because they're just older. But what the caller is asking about is really, it's part of the theme that we're hearing, is that businesses have to become more flexible. There's 170, 180,000 people that are going to be in retirement age in the next 5 years, over a decade. And so we're going to have to figure out ways to make those jobs flexible so that older people will want them and younger people will want them, right? We have to think about whether those job requirements that we pull out the job ad that we used last time, and it's got all these requirements and none of them matter anymore, right? Or we don't need them all, but we still just post the same old job ad, right? And people are getting screened out of jobs that they're potentially qualified for just because of the processes that we follow. And so basically everything is being disrupted, and businesses are having to adjust, which is hard work.
Right, and so Keala, can you speak to that? Do you think that there is an appetite for older workers, these folks who say, 16 of us applied, repeatedly not hired? How do businesses adapt not only to create opportunities for young people, but also for those who may have retired for a time and now want to come back?
Yeah, so I think businesses are certainly reevaluating their requirements for employment, both on the minimum requirement side and elsewhere. And they're really being forced to broaden their lens and consider, you can call them the I think it's called the hidden workforce is the term. And so it's not just the older population, but it's veterans, it's those who are justice involved, it's individuals with disabilities. And there are great examples in the community of businesses who have had great success hiring individuals. Big City Diner, Target come to mind. And so I think we have to share those stories so that people can change their perception and understand that this truly is an incredible part of our workforce that can help fill their hiring needs. So there's some work to be done there. You know, we hope to provide some opportunities to share those stories of success to help folks understand and realize that the workforce is starting to look different.
And Carl, I want to ask you this question, and then I'd love Eric to weigh in on this one. This is Lori from Kauai. Says, to me, workforce housing is so critical for filling jobs, especially for people who live in Hawaii, teachers, nurses. I would add hotel workers as well to this list. How can we include this so people can afford to stay? We hear a lot about affordable housing. The governor ran on this, but is there a way that private industry can help to be part of that conversation?
I think all of industry can get together and form a hui to look at how do we solve some of the housing issues. As you know, we have a hospital on Kauai as well, and one of the greatest challenges we have is finding available housing to bring people to Kauai. So yeah, I think we all have to get together. I don't think there's one simple answer, but I do think if we start looking at how do we solve the cost of living issue that the governor is talking about, how do we get businesses together to look at ways to invest and look at workforce housing, has to be done. And along Keala's point, I can tell you that businesses are starting to change. I mean, we continue to tell everybody, you've got to start looking at hiring on skill-based and not necessarily qualification-based. Not everybody needs to have a college degree. And I think we need to start looking more, as we were talking earlier, about hiring the person who can do the job, not necessarily the person who can get the job. And so changing that focus gets to the point that some of your listeners were talking about with applying to jobs and not being, because as Carl said, we were using old metrics and old qualifications, and we've got to change that dynamic.
You know, Eric, Carl Bonham talked about 25,000 people or so leaving. Affordability is a real key piece of that. Tell us a little bit about the workforce housing challenges.
Well, housing, daycare, I mean, the community has to provide support for workers so that they can live and work. And we're not good at that. You know, we've been arguing about every new condo that's permitted in town, and there's dozens of them, and they're all empty or bought out by, you know, people who don't live here and don't live in that building. And yet the amount of affordable housing that's been attached to that has been very small and pretty cynical. And I think in one case we argued there's not enough units, and what they did was, okay, we'll make more units. They just made them all smaller. So there has to be some community intervention. The market is not doing it by itself. We have to design support for workers if we expect people to work. And I think, you know, housing, absolutely. You know, we brought in a mortgage program, and it's an excellent mortgage program. It's the best in the nation. People could get, you know, but the fact is, you know, you can qualify for $500,000 to buy a home, and there's no home to buy for $500,000. The inventory isn't there. Even, you know, it's possible to find the financing, but there's nothing to buy. So we have to have a much more holistic approach to this, and that includes training. I agree about getting into the schools. We've been, you know, this is not something our hotels have done well, but need to. The truth is, you know, we've got, you know, jobs that, you know, you can come out of high school and you can make $50,000 a year in the hotel and another, you know, $20,000 worth of benefits. People don't know that. You know, students aren't, I don't know what they're doing in school nowadays, but it doesn't seem like.
We're trying to educate them on what's available.
So, you know, so there's a lot that needs to be done in terms of making jobs more attractive, but also making it clear what attractions there are. Right. You know, we've got a lot of an aging workforce as well, and for the first time since the pandemic, it actually dropped a couple of years because of that. You know, we saw older people kind of just throw in the towel. It's like, okay, let somebody else have the job. I'm going to move on. But we got to address that too. For somebody young, if you're not working on a pension now, I don't know what you're going to do when you retire. and yet very few employers offer pension. And I don't know about you, my 401k took a dive this past year. It just took a dive.
Well, let's bring in NOLA on this. I know that the city does offer some robust benefits, but going back to that affordability piece, you know, the mayor also says that he is very much an advocate of, you know, creating new housing opportunities, but buildings take, you know, a decade to build. So in the meantime, are there creative things that the city's looking at? Could there be vouchers? Could there be other programs, incentives for, you know, we've heard about it before, you know, to perhaps bring more police officers by offering them a rental subsidy. What are some of the things that you're looking at?
We definitely looked at ways to enhance our employment offers in the city too. And with, you know, combined with the mayor's affordable housing push, he's really very aggressive, and that's why they recently purchased the Waikiki Vista, because it's a volume purchase, and the approach is to try to get, you know, as quickly as possible, more units online and to keep affordable housing that is in place in that category without falling offline from the private sector. So that is definitely a goal. And in conjunction with our employment, we have looked at, you know, using these acquisitions to enhance our own workers, because some of our workers, many of them, as Eric mentioned, don't make the kind of wages even for two earners to buy, you know, the seven-figure homes and to even put the down payment down. So we're looking at it. We haven't actually pulled the trigger on anything, but it's been under discussion, and we're looking for ways that we can do that, especially for some of the recruits that we have in the you know, in the public safety area where we really have an opportunity and really big need. Yeah. So yes.
Can I give an example
Please.
Of what we're talking about? So we, at the Polynesian Cultural Center in our culinary division, we have a sous chef, and he is amazing. And he's graduating from BYU Hawaii in, I believe it's April. And he wants to stay. He's married, got a young baby, another one on the way. He wants to stay here, but he could not stay because of housing. There was just none to have. So we cannot lose him because we are already slim in the culinary skilled positions. And so we put the full force of our corporate HR behind it. And we were able to find something. It was really a blessing. And because he wants to be here, he wants to make a career here on the island. His wife is from Tonga, but they were going to have to go back to the mainland because of this very issue. This is just such a real problem. People on the mainland, they don't deal with this, right? There's nobody who puts their full HR corporate resources to help find one sous chef a place to live that would be good for them. But that's what we're going through, to just keep one sous chef.
Right.
That's how important it is.
And you have the resources to do that, but I would imagine that, Ryan, not all of your members can do that for the chefs in their kitchen as well. I mean, that's a tremendous resource and a tremendous gift, right? What, you know, to help someone in that struggle. What kind of a difference do you think the affordability piece is making to the workforce when it comes to restaurants?
So Mayor Blangiardi has been working, his first bill was Bill 1, and it was to incentivize smaller developers to build affordable housing. So I have 6 companies, 190 employees, and right now I have 90 units that are in the planning and design phase. And what that will allow us to do is to provide some of these workers affordability, right, and in terms of rental. But there's actually 25 of these buildings that are being built under this program. I think the city is trying to incentivize other developers to also get involved and create, you know, shorter term solutions also that can be done that won't take 10 years.
Yeah, and I would imagine it's a similar story for your staff as well. Roseann.
Myself?
Yeah. Just the affordability piece, the fact that, you know, can you buy a house working in retail? That can be tough if you're talking about these entry-level workers that are coming in. You know, how do they make rent? Maybe they go to the 9th Island because it's just too tough.
Again, I have a wide range of employees, and I do have kids in high school and in college as well. I like to think that I'm a foundation for a lot of them to start there and then move on to possibly their career, but there's a lot of growth within TNC as well. But they do perhaps not only work TNC, they also have another job. And some of them do live at home, you know, so that's a benefit for them. But yes, those that are looking to save money, they may have to maintain another job. But again, you know, we do offer development and training as well, so they can move forward and possibly make that affordable for them.
I just don't think that in the future multi-generational housing, it can be accepted the same way it is today. People don't want to live 3 and 4 generations in a home. That's why we've seen, at least from my experience, we've seen people leave and go to the mainland. They want their own home. They want to be able to have a backyard. They want to have those things. We just cannot continue to make it okay that you're just going to grow up and you're just going to live multi-generational and you're probably never going to have your own house. That takes hope away. We have to do better than that.
We have a question for Celine, direct for you from Facebook tonight. As a younger member of the community, what is it that you hope to pursue, and what can employers do to make it worth your time or gain interest of people of your age? So speaking for yourself, but also speaking for your peers tonight.
Okay, I think, so speaking for myself, I'd like to pursue something, well, maybe a bit of context. So I went to college, I pursued a degree in business admin, also got funded a scholarship through HTA, and that scholarship required me to do community service. And through the requirement, I pursued kupu to complete the requirements, and through the experience, it has brought me closer to the Hawaiian culture, and especially like Olelo Hawaii, the Hawaiian language, and kind of changed my look to more so like pursue something that would impact Hawaii in a positive way, and be able to kind of bridge the gap or like make a positive change between, tourism as well as malama aina, aloha aina, towards like regenerative tourism. Okay, speaking for my people, or like people of my generation, I think that we're pursuing things that interest us. A lot of the people I may have spoken with, they are more so thinking about like their hobbies of what they want to pursue, as well as how can they make it happen. And some people even like moved out of state to pursue those things as well. Yeah, that's all that comes to mind right now.
That's wonderful. There's a comment here, and Danene, I wanted you to weigh in on this. It says people want to work, but employers are not flexible with scheduling, for example, accommodating workers with kids. I know that you have a variety of age groups that work for you, and I would imagine there are some mothers on your staff. So as a business owner, how have you adapted, and how has that helped to retain workers?
So we're very flexible. We have a lot of call-ins, we have a lot of swaps. It's totally acceptable. Not only do we do retail, we also have other, you can model, you can help with social media, you can, there's many more facets that you don't only have to do retail on the floor. Some days they might come in and they only want to help in the back room, or, be the website. They want to pull orders for a website. So there's a lot of ways that you can be flexible, and you can still work from home, or not necessarily bring your child to work, but you're able to work with your child at home. There's a lot of, when you trust the person that you're working next to, you need to be able to just know that I need to get in there and help that next person. So.
Well, no, and I love that. And Jared, I want you to answer this question. During the pandemic, some people developed internet-based side hustles. How do any of the panelists feel that this has impacted how some people feel about a traditional 9-to-5 job? We focus on Celine because she's a young person. You're a relatively young person too.
Thank you.
I'm interested because you're in a traditional career path, but for those around you, how much do you think that sort of gig economy has impacted who's going into the traditional labor force?
So with the rise of social media, I totally think that like people of Celine's generation, I'm 25 right now, but people of that younger demographic are very much looking for like potential, like that new gig economy, right? Or just like becoming your own boss, having like that flexibility that Celine mentioned earlier. They're all things that I think people of that younger generation see on social media. They see it on YouTube, they see it on maybe like TikTok or all of these media sites, right? And it makes them very, very incentivized to say like, hey, look how fun that this person's having. Look at how great of a life that they can be living. And it kind of shifts their perspective of, okay, now like me, myself, I think I can do that. So maybe I want to try go work in the gig economy, work in that kind of environment and try out that kind of lifestyle. For me personally, I wish I could. It's a very lucrative option, but unfortunately I can't. And I think a lot of like locals right now, like a lot of like local talent, they're kind of all seeing the possibilities that are out there, right? And maybe those opportunities, like maybe Hawaii, they don't know about the opportunities that are out there in Hawaii specifically, so they have to like go away. I have a bunch of my colleagues that went to college with me. They were all local, went to Mililani, went to Roosevelt, and almost half of them, they all just moved to Seattle, moved to Portland because there's a lot of better opportunities out there. The cost of living is a lot less. So for me personally, I guess seeing it from a role, like I'm a hotel assistant manager right now. I'm seeing it from a role where I work a 9-to-5 shift, and I see all of my past colleagues or like my friends that are just out there living this different kind of life, right? It's really like all about perspective, and that's kind of been my experience right now, just
as the 29-year-old in the room,
not required
as the next relatively young person.
The gig economy is wearing thin already.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at it, you know, they had to shut down Uber because they're not letting them guys to improve their conditions. Uber will change your compensation right there, and you can't do anything about it. The gig economy is great as a side job, but where are you going to get your medical? Where are you going to have a retirement? You know, and I think you know there is something that, you know, young people, and I think every generation wants to have a lot of opportunities. But the truth is, people also got to make their job into a better one, and that's what I do. I mean, that's what we do, is try to help people make the job they got into a better one to address the issues. And in a gig economy, you just don't have that. And so I think, you know, we gotta, you know, it's a new thing. It's popular. People trying to make a living on Uber, they're just going to have a tough time.
But I think it's all based on value. So I mean, think about entrepreneurship, that you have to have the risk tolerance, and that's the kind of person that's going to pursue creating their own business or having the gig economy. But you think about the values, and I want to make sure you have a chance to talk as a 29-year-old in the room. But as a 45-year-old who works with a lot of 29-year-olds, but also entrepreneurs, it's what do you value? And I think that flexibility is what's valued, but also having that learning mentality an ownership mentality of your life where you're learning from every experience, and it may not be that the 401k or the pension is most important. It's a different world. We're I think Gen X was the last generation where we were kind of towing the line, right? We just got in and started working, but Gen Y, Gen Z, all of that is a completely different mindset, and that's what is, I guess, exciting, but also is shifting gears a lot.
Right, because you don't necessarily have the same safety net. Right?
Yes, you don't, but maybe that's not what's important right now. It's about learning and living, and then maybe you shift gears in a few years. I don't know.
He said healthcare,
but
and I know we want to get to the 29-year-old. And I'm
That's
not telling you what
they will know me as.
But when we talk about the gig economy maybe going away, I don't think that's true in healthcare. I mean, we today have more of the healthcare workforce that are traveling, which is the gig economy. We have hundreds of travelers here helping us meet our everyday healthcare needs. And it's because it offers the flexibility. It offers a little bit more on the compensation side. It's providing benefits.
A lot more on the
A lot more
compensation side.
benefits. But the challenge is that how is that sustainable as
right,
a healthcare
because the
industry?
federal government was paying the bill for those
Right,
traveling
federal government
nurses.
was helping us pay for some of that. But now that those dollars have gone away, we can't continue that. We've got to look at how do we train up our workforce. But a lot of it is this same gig economy they have to get back into the workforce in a different way. Or we've got to figure out how to do it differently.
Yeah, as somebody with a gig, as somebody with the full-time job and with a gig, for me, the gig is really just a mental health thing. Like, it is something that they.
So you have a job and a side hustle?
Yeah, I do photography. So in New York, I did the structural, very like 9 to 5. You come into the office, took that train all the time, 9 to 5, and then I would literally run to my second job in the theater, like 6 streets down, and then in between those times, I would take pictures because actors, everybody needs pictures for social media, and then so I think but then. Obviously, like everybody's points, the gig is not going to sustain you. You don't get medical. You don't get that. Like as much as I would love to be a full-time photographer, it's just not. It's really, really hard. It's not impossible, but it's just difficult. And I value not having to do accounting and taxes like on my own. So like it's a nice side gig for me. And I think it's just part of like my mental health and like I like taking. Like you said, learning about yourself, learning about, like there's so many photographers here, it's hard to compete. But I was able to kind of pivot and be creative with how I am with my gig, and I just try to take pictures of ohana, because when my oma passed away, I noticed we didn't have pictures of her with our ohana. So I just tried to change, I think everybody here says, just you kind of have to pivot, you have to be a little bit creative with yourself, and but that's just kind of my comment on gig economy. I have my cousin is a doctor, full doctor, and she has a side gig where she just doodles, and it just helps her mentally, and it's all doctor-related doodles that she sells on Etsy, and I think it's adorable, and I think it's great, and I think it's a perfect avenue for her to stay as a doctor, stay in the healthcare field. Yeah, yes, exactly.
Well, so let's bring in Carl here, but I want to do, there is this question, and when we were preparing for this show, this is the one that got me, and a viewer emailed, and I would love your input on this. How are the workers who were working pre-pandemic and now not returning to work meeting their needs, rent, food, clothing, etc.? Those pandemic checks aren't coming anymore. So Carl, how are people paying the rent?
So let's back up a second. So there's a perception that there are a whole bunch of people out there who aren't working. And it's highly unlikely that that's true. It was true during the pandemic. There was a tremendous amount of support, federal support, that helped people to get through this. But I think one of the primary, well, not the primary, but one of the reasons that we've been talking about, the gig economy, is filling up all those second jobs that people used to have. Yes. Or it's one of the ways that they're avoiding the second job. So businesses that used to employ those people are not anymore. They're driving for Uber, or they're doodling, or or they started their own businesses. So one of the things we saw during the pandemic was record high levels of business starts, nationally and in Hawaii. So the fastest business formation, and these are people who lost their jobs in a restaurant or in a hotel, and then created a new business, right? So now maybe they're cooking at home and selling it online, or whatever it is. And so it's not necessarily that there are just a whole bunch of people out there living somehow with no income and no job. They're doing it in other ways, right? They are earning income in other ways.
Julie, I have a question for you here from Bob. Says, would the training at the high school level help keep young people from leaving the state? Why not train in multiple industries? I think that speaks really to the work that you do, and what kind of a difference that kind of contact, you talked about police officers. The HPD was at my son's preschool just last week, and you're right, that was all we talked about for days and days. So talking to Bob on Maui, what kind of impact does that have on high school students once they graduate leaving the state?
Absolutely, and I'm just going to go back to the gig economy really quickly because this ties in. So what we're seeing is I've launched technology to connect educators and businesses across the state. We have over 600 businesses and over 200 schools and 4,500 educators. What we've seen is businesses adapting and creating jobs as gigs, right? So a lot of these events can serve as gig jobs, and it's actually supported the teachers. And so we see a lot of these teachers taking those gig jobs on the side, and it's giving them that support that they need. And it's great. I get a lot of Instagram posts and Facebook posts, and they've got a new pair of shoes or a bag, but they're able to just show up on a Saturday, work this event, make $27 an hour, and go back to their jobs. So there is a benefit to these gig jobs that are popping up. And in regards to exposing our youth to so many different career paths and opportunities, that's exactly it. That's what the portal does. We expose them to everything that's possible here in Hawaii. and make sure that they see those steps that are there. So we've got everything in the portal from opportunities in the defense industry and healthcare and hospitality, engineering. We have women, a lot of women-focused speakers and groups, women in lodging, all wanting to make sure that our keiki know that women can do anything and that we want you in filling in these engineering positions, and we've got transportation, you name it, it's all there. And the requests that we've seen, we launched this in January of 2021, and we've already seen over 70,000 students engaged by events through the portal, and thousands of requests coming through from teachers and linking them up, that we've seen the requests across a whole variety of industries. So it's happening, right, as we talk about, but this is our youth. So we'll see as they're graduating and moving through, it's not going to be instantaneous, but we're working hard to make that difference and to get in front of all these students.
I want to bring in this question. I want to direct this to you, Robin. There are workers out there, just employers who only want to hire the best job, reserved only for mainlanders. I would argue that Hawaiian Airlines is kind of the opposite, because you can't really teach aloha, right? And so when you board a Hawaiian Airlines flight, the whole branding, right, is all centered around being around Kama'aina. So tell us about how you recruit locally and why that is important to you. Sort of counter to what this viewer is saying, that employers only want to hire the best job, they reserve the best job for mainlanders. First of all, do you think that's true, and how do you sort of counterbalance that with what your model?
Yeah, so I actually would disagree with that, because when I'm sure this is true for any employer in Hawaii, living in Hawaii is a very, very different experience than living on the mainland, and we have seen people who move to the mainland struggle to make it in Hawaii, either finding friends, finding a love partner, really finding that they belong in this culture. And so if all things being equal, we would actually give preference to somebody with ties to Hawaii, either have lived here, maybe moved away, or have remained here. That is our preference. They understand the culture, they have a lot of ties to our community. Then it's very important, because our culture within Hawaiian Airlines is so inextricably intertwined with where we are, which is Hawaii. And so, of course, we would want to hire local. I think where that perception comes into play is in specialized areas like healthcare, like airlines, where there are certain positions that are so highly technical, and you need a lot of years of training, or you need a lot of depth of experience in a very technical specific area. So for instance, right now, we're looking for an executive for our airport operations job. And that is the leader of a very large segment of our business. And we need to have someone who has a lot of experience leading large groups, understanding how airlines work, understanding best practices in the industry. And the airline industry is very small, and we don't have that many airlines here in Hawaii as a hub that's big enough to have that type of experience. So there are a few select jobs that are very specialist. I'm sure it's true of specialists and doctors as well, that we have to look for that experience, because it's such a high-level job that has to bring a high degree of expertise. But I would say the vast majority of jobs, we would much prefer to have someone with ties to Hawaii.
Yeah, I see you nodding there. I mean, I know that has to be true for your brand.
Okay, let's go back to the gig. The gig, you just described an entrepreneur, and that's the person who grew their gig. And so that's what I did. I just grew I love to sew, I love to print, I love color, and then I'm going to grow it into a clothing brand.
You guys' shoot at Ulupo is what got me.
There you go. But Hawaiian Airlines, I mean, you've given lots of small businesses the opportunity. We got to work with you in a collaboration. Yes. So
I wear stuff all the time.
But that's how, I mean, small businesses, we were the backbone during pandemic. Yeah. Like, we held everything together, and we made sure that the people that were here still were able to hold on to what they have and start new companies and start new projects and be creative and continue the gig. So
and I think
thanks for saying
Janine's
that.
point earlier, like the fact that, you know, as owners of the business is headquartered here, they can have that flexibility to create that flexible
to create an
time
opportunity.
or opportunities, that growth path, but also The one day you want to do fulfillment versus be on the floor.
Yes.
And you can do that as the owner, as the management.
And lots of the girls that work with us, one of them became an esthetician. So she still works with us, but we go to her and she's our esthetician. And the other one does the jewelry. So, you know, it's like there's lots of companies within our company that have been born.
Yeah, and Kawika, let's hear from you on this whole idea of you know, the gig economy, and also what Jared was talking about, the allure of social media and all of the things that you see young people sort of pursuing as they try to figure out what's the best career path for them. Yeah, it's great conversation. I feel like it's been so interesting that I've just wanted to listen. But yeah, really good to participate in it. I'd like to maybe first go back to one of the harder conversations for us to have, which is what do we do in order to change this issue that we're talking about, where some of those best jobs, where our great paying jobs are more likely to be hard to fill with our kama'aina, because I think that work is going to, it's something that you can't solve overnight. It's something that needs to be addressed through an upstream approach. And I think it's, you know, really important for starters to make sure that our youth know what those jobs are, how those positions connect with what they're excited about already, what they're passionate about, and we need to do consistent, good work within the education system to keep them connected to those opportunities. Speaking from the conservation sector, you know, when I go into an elementary school classroom and I ask who wants to care for the aina, who wants to get dirty for work, who wants to work outside, right? All the hands go up. There's tons of passion. Nobody needs to convince the young generation to care about the environment. What we need to do a much better job of is show them how they can have a good career in Hawaii caring for the environment. A lot of people think when they think about conservation positions, you may be thinking of a conservation technician, a junior forester, and we may not realize that there are great paying jobs like conservation scientist, where Hawaii is actually one of the best paying states in the US for conservation scientists. And there are other wonderful positions where you can have a good career in Hawaii giving back to the environment. With the changes happening in our world, that's only going to increase because that type of conservation and aina-based knowledge will only be more important to the work that we do, both within the environmental sectors and across all of the different economic sectors in Hawaii. Yeah, and that idea of having, oh, thank you, I love getting more questions. I think there's a good question here from Jocelyn, and this is for you tonight, Nola. How can we also empower the middle-aged employees? So we talked about seniors, and we also talked about youth. How can we also empower the middle-aged employee to stay employed? It seems as if the focus is on keiki retention in the workforce. What would you say to that?
Well, I think that retention for us is really important now because if we hire 1,000 workers this year and we lose 800 or more of them, you know, we haven't gained as much as if we could retain our really valuable workers. So we are looking at all kinds of things. We also, even though we're a public sector employee, we have looked at flexible work hours. We've always had these policies on our books, but we have been more aggressive in bringing them, making them available. So 4-10 work weeks, 3-12 work days, you know, flexible work hours, teleworking where it's possible for those kinds of city workers. So we look at ways to be more flexible and make more options available to our staff and to existing employees. We're looking at career paths, making sure that there are career paths because the paths that we have had for employers sometimes are outdated. So, and then there's different kinds of skill sets that we can't that aren't being provided by the training that's available in the community. So we have apprenticeships for things like pipe fitters and the Board of Water Supply. We're asking our departments to look really carefully at reducing the entry requirements for some of the jobs. It's hard to find licensed engineers to bring right off the bat. So it does require training and commitment from our existing employees to downgrade some of these positions. But it's making it easier. It will make us easier to find people to join our workforce that way.
Yeah, Eric, I want to go to you because it's interesting. You know, we hear a lot of employers and people here tonight who have that willingness to be flexible and who are willing to adapt to the needs of the workers. You're on the other side of that negotiating table trying to get more benefits. What are those conversations like post-pandemic? Are you seeing more flexibility in those discussions?
Well, not directly in the hotel industry. Let me give you an example. We represent Kaiser workers as well. And we had a bunch of housekeepers that were unemployed, and we found some money. We trained them to be medical assistants because Kaiser was going to hire them. Most of them chose to get that licensure and open up their own nursing home. And a lot of times what they were trying to do was create the reality. They got elderly parents in the room. They got young kids. If they go to work, who's going to watch that? So I think some of the older people that retired for that reason. I've seen a bunch of our older workers have to retire because their parents are old and there's no way or no access to elder care for them. It's a long waiting list to get into a place. And I was really struck during the pandemic, you know, everybody talked about essential workers, and yet you look at those essential workers, whether, you know, these are the most underpaid jobs there are, and yet we all depend on them. You know, teachers have a hard time making a living. You know, we represent the nursing home. These workers are capped. Medicaid reimbursement rates caps how much money they can make. And so some of this stuff has to be addressed with social policy. You know, we have to invest in daycare for our children and our parents. We have to do that so that people can work. And, you know, I mean, all these things are happening. I'm learning a lot too, you know, and we see it. We do a lot of training. You know, we have, you know, how do you train up, you know, if you're going to train up somebody to be an electrician, okay, they need on-the-job training. You need training hours signed off by a journeyman. Who's going to provide that? Who's going to pay for that? And the hotel's not anxious to go double their staff, you know, so that they can train somebody. Who's going to pay for childcare, daycare, training? All those things need to be provided by society in order to support the employers who want to hire people. And so it's not enough to just look at the micro. We have to look at the macro. And I would just point out something nobody said here. All across the country, it's true. In our industry, my workforce is 75+% immigrants. And nobody in Hawaii made the immigration rules, but that pipeline is cut. And we see impossible, you know, all across the country, especially in the areas where the workforce was being replenished by a immigration pipeline. That's all been cut. So naturally there's a labor shortage. And, you know, so these big policy issues do make a difference, and it makes a difference for everyone on both sides of the table. You know, people will work, I think, if it makes sense for them economically. Mm-hmm. But if they got to pay somebody else to watch their dad and their kids, it's like it just doesn't work. Those jobs need to be upgraded. Preschool teachers are living in poverty. I mean, how can we inflict that on the workforce and yet expect people to go work?
Carl, he's talking about fundamental shifts in sort of how we operate as a society. You know, some of that is in play when we look at the investment in preschool education that is being worked on. But those classrooms are not going to open for some time. So in the meantime, you know, you started talking about this car accident that we all went through. How do we untangle? How long does it take for the road to clear?
So the road is actually way more clear than we realize. Things have changed dramatically in Hawaii over the last 6 to 8 months. The labor market has healed significantly, but all the issues we're talking about, many of them are very long-standing. The health care, the child care, the adult dependent care, the cost of rent, none of these things are brand new. They weren't caused by the pandemic. It just brought them to light. And so there is, I think, some reason for optimism that things are going to change over the next several years. And that's partly because of some of the proposals that we're seeing at the legislature, the governor's GAP plan that at UHERO we're working on this pretty hard to make sure that we can optimize this with things such as providing people with assistance on rent, providing them with assistance on child care and on dependent care. So if you're taking care of your parents, you can get some tax relief there, and it's not small amounts of money. It can really make a difference. There's a lot of work to be done on housing, and I think the big takeaway on housing is that's the issues with high cost of housing have been in Hawaii since before any of us were born. And if we keep doing things the same way we've been doing them, we're going to get the same result. And so but the problems are so widespread. You said earlier, you said it takes 10 years to build a building. Well, it takes about a year to build a building, but it takes 10 years to get it permitted. And we've got to change all of that. And we have to change the fact that we're not building multifamily housing anywhere in the state because it's not permitted. It's not allowed in most parts of our islands. We're not allowed to build high rises.
We've talked a lot about the struggles tonight, but Melly, I want you to tell us why Hawaii is a good place to grow a business. I think that, we don't want all doom and gloom, because it is, I mean, we all call it home, we're all invested, hopefully we're all lifers here, if you will. And so, as you talk to entrepreneurs who might say, oh, this would be a lot easier if the labor was cheaper, or if I could outsource this or that, why is Hawaii a good place to be in business?
Yeah, so, as I mentioned earlier, we're seeing a lot of the companies that they are growing. I think there's a massive tailwind happening with trends where people are looking for high quality goods we can actually flip over the package, what's in this. I can read the ingredients. They're grown in Hawaii. I trust that. Anything grown in Hawaii obviously has magical powers. People are going to pay for that, right? But all joking aside, it's an amazing place to do business because we have such a close-knit ohana, and the community really cares for each other. I was mentioning with Danene earlier, having more locally headquartered companies. We saw during the pandemic, entrepreneurs, business owners rolling up their sleeves and totally shifting gears and pivoting, putting Hawaii first. And that's something we've always done. There's always just been this wonderful way of, having that support where you make a wrong move, you've got that support to jump back up, or you always had that hobby and maybe now's that time to pursue it. So we're seeing massive amounts of entrepreneurs popping up, as Carl mentioned, startup formation. But also one of the things that we need to work on is making it easier to do business here. I mean, job creators, job creation, and affordable housing are the two aspects of workforce that are key to having a healthy workforce. And so we are seeing great startup formation. We are seeing this great community that's supporting. We're seeing Hawaii as this model for the future, which I think was something maybe not 10 or 15 years ago, where people are looking to us from a sustainability standpoint. It's an aspirational brand. It's an aspirational place. And all these things are actually moving that momentum for a lot of companies here to have that leg up. To be able to pursue now where maybe that's different. And also with technology, that adoption of technology. We may be an isolated chain in the middle of the Pacific. We have challenges, but also there's a lot of them are shifting, and a lot of remote work and being able to access people that may be able to have that specific skill set that doesn't have to be here, but also looking at logistics and other things like that with shipping that is able to kind of level that playing field. Yeah. So it is very exciting, and we're seeing that.
Yeah, and Jared, I mean, you spoke about friends who have moved to Seattle, friends who have gone to other places. Why did you choose as a worker to stay here? And you're doing the 9 to 5. You're working your way up the ladder. Why is Hawaii a good place as a worker, do you think?
I was born and raised here. This is my home. I feel my family is all over here. Like, it's just very familiar for me. And to be honest, I think at least working in hotels, working in hospitality, or tourism in general is just, I went to school, I studied travel industry management, and it's a very lucrative industry to kind of be a part of, and I see myself growing in it. But I think a big reason that I personally am in Hawaii and what my goals are is I want to be able to make a difference, and I want to be able to, these changes that everyone is saying, like, I thought one of the big consensus that everyone was talking about tonight was the shift towards sustainability, the importance of, bringing in that local culture, right? And that's kind of what makes employers want, or that's something that employees are going to want to look for in an employer. And My goal is, I think Hawaii before, or the tourism industry before, was very focused on, you know, it's like get as much tourists here as possible and try to milk them for as much money as they can. But I'm hoping we can change the perspective to make Hawaii a destination that really focuses on that Hawaiian culture and, you know, that authenticity that Hawaii has to offer and all the natural beauty. And I would love to be like in a role, like as I move up into my position into like the corporate ladder of like hotels or just management in that sense, to make a difference with those employees and make Hawaii a better place.
Yeah, Greg, let's hear your thoughts on that, because that's, you know, that shrinking down that you talked about, that's sort of what he's talking about.
Yeah, we saw that as our opportunity to make that, to reduce our footprint, which was, if you'd have told me in 2019 that we were going to reduce our footprint by 30 to 40% and still have our best year ever, we would have thought you were crazy. But it's about taking everything we've talked about tonight and making these shifts and pivots into things that we never thought we would do. And I'm just so excited. I'm literally, I can't wait to get back and report what I've heard tonight, because there's so many great ideas, there's so many great things, there's so much hope for Hawaii and for the businesses here. It's very exciting.
I see you nodding there. What are your thoughts?
For myself, well, I'm, you know, here, TNC Surf is a locally owned company, family-based, and we've been around for 51 years. So we're doing something right, and, you know, I'm just proud to be a part of the company. I've been a part of the company for 25 years, and I love every, you know, bit of it, yeah.
Yeah, and go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I would say, you know, what I think is really important is to build workforce, energy, and economy around love for Hawaii, right? If what you are passionate about, what you want to do with your life is to love Hawaii, there's no better place to do that than here in Hawaii, right? And of course, you know, when I'm talking about it from Kupu's perspective, we're thinking about sustainability, conservation, natural resource management, but it's also about community. It's also about people, that connectedness. So what, you know, this can sound like a touchy-feely sort of thing, but I think it's really important when we think about an economy that reflects our values and what we love about this place. I think it's really important for us to build our energy around what we can do to build a workforce and economy that loves Hawaii actively.
And we have less than a minute left. I'm going to give Celine the last word tonight. You know, what he's talking about is really sounds like exactly what you're looking for. That connection to the culture, to the Aina.
Yeah, that definitely, like, I don't know if you see me, but I was nodding, like, definitely. I believe that if more opportunities are geared towards Aloha Aina, loving where we are, that way we don't need to go out away from Hawaii to pursue something meaningful, then, yeah, like, I wish everyone luck. You guys can do it.
Okay, well, thank you all for being here tonight. Our goal in these 90 minutes is not to solve Hawaii's workforce challenges. That is simply not possible in this forum or time frame. But we do bring together some of the best and brightest in our community to unpack and explore these issues so that we can all better understand them and move forward together. Mahalo to all of our guests for sharing their expertise, and to those of you at home for being a part of tonight's discussion. We will be back next month for another KΑKOU to talk about Hawaii's disappearing beaches. The climate is changing and our shorelines are changing along with it. There is a lot we need to talk about. We hope you do join us then. Until next time, I'm Yanji Denise. Aloha.
This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station. From viewers like you, thank you.
Local broadcasts of KΑKOU are made possible by the support of viewers like you. Mahalo. And by Young Brothers, providing quality service you can count on, connecting our island communities for over 120 years as the state's leading inter-island freight transportation company.
You're watching PBS Hawaiʻi, supported by viewers like you. It's not just TV, it's Hawaiian cultural connections. PBS Hawaiʻi, home is here.
Local broadcasts of PBS Hawaiʻi Presents are made possible by the support of viewers like you. Mahalo. And by Paisha Hawaii, a third-generation family-owned company with island roots dating back to World War II, is a proud supporter of Hawaii's music, arts, and culture. Waimea Valley, where Hawaii comes alive, preserving and perpetuating human, cultural, and natural resources for future generations. Hawaiian Airlines, proud to support the great traditions of Hawaii, including public broadcasting by PBS Hawaiʻi.